Can we start, sir?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
can we start?
Sure, sure.
I'm audible, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
A very good evening to all respected seniors and my dear friends. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. That is the unspoken grief of both mother and doctors when a child is lost through ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancy, a home away from home, is a dilemma for both patients and the obstetrician. The seed may be planted anywhere in this womb, anywhere. So on behalf of Hapur and Obs Gynae Society, I, Dr. Anna Saxena, cheerfully welcome you all. Sometimes challenges and struggles are exactly what we need in our lives. May we welcome every effort, every challenge and struggle. May we open our wings and fly with the experience and knowledge of our national faculty and dear friends, which will help us to solve dilemmas regarding ectopic pregnancy. It is our proud privilege to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Parag Biniwala, guest of honor, Dr. Ritu Khanna, speaker for the day, Dr. Muralidhar V. Pai ji, today's presenter, Dr. Sarita Tyagi, and our chairpersons, Dr. Manju Shukla, Dr. Namita Agarwal, and Dr. Nidhi Thakur. Namaskar and pranam to all. So not wasting any more time, friends, I ask permission from our seniors to start the program. Shall I start the program, ma'am?
Yes.
We start the session by remembering and joining our hands in prayer to the Almighty Lord. Vakratun Mahakaya, Surya Koti Samprabha, Om Bhurbhasva Tasvatur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodhyat. O God Almighty, shower all your blessings on us. May God bless us. It is indeed going to be a great session with so many stalwarts in the webinar. Friends, the questions will be answered after each session. So put your questions in the chat box because my team will see and will answer the questions. Now I request our building block, Dr. Asha Mishra, who not only motivates but urges us to move forward with energy and confidence and helps us a lot to kindly take over the session. Dr. Asha Mishra, ma'am, please introduce our.
Thank you, Anjana, for the lovely words. You know, the development in the field of management of ectopic pregnancy have drastically reduced the maternal mortality. So our focus, which was save the mother's life, has changed to save the woman's fertility. So our topic is very, very important and we have many. And I am really so much honored to have such stalwarts in this budding society. I am profusely overjoyed to introduce our chief guest, Dr. Parag Biniwala. He is an eminent consultant obstetric gynae of Pune. He is a devoted PG teacher and unit head of the Kamla Nehru Hospital. He is Vice President ICOG 2021 and 2022. He is President Menopausal Society Pune. He is President-elect Pune Obs Gynae Society for year 22 to 23. He has successfully completed his tenure as Secretary ICOG from 18 to 20. He is a former National Website Editor Foxy from 11 to 17. A peer reviewer Journal of Obs Gynae of India from 11 to 17. He is a past chairman, Young Talent Promotion Committee Foxy from 2008 to 2010. He has been co-editor of many books, to name some: Exploring New Horizon of Obs Gynae, maybe the Gynecological Manual on Adolescent Girls and Young Women. He has contributed many articles in books and journals and delivered orations, guest lectures in over 130 Foxy Society. He is the recipient of C.S. Dawn Prize in the 51st All India Congress of OBGYN in Delhi. He is a great academician. Academics is his passion. We all are so glad to have you, sir. So I hand over to you to say a few words about this budding society.
Thank you, madam, for those kind words. Good evening, all. I bring greetings from Pune, and of course, ICOG, which is the academic wing of FOXY. At the outset, let me thank the office bearers and members of Hapur OBGY Society, the President Dr. Asha Mishra, Secretary Dr. Anjana Saxena, Scientific Secretary Dr. Vimlesh Sharma, Treasurer Dr. Renu Bansal, Joint Secretary Dr. Deepshikha Goyal, and everybody. It's indeed a pleasure to share this dais with Dr. Ritu Khanna, who's recently installed as the chairperson of the Food, Drugs and Medico-Surgical Equipments Committee. I am indeed delighted to be with the Hapur Society. Again, this is one society which I have not visited, so at least I get a chance to visit you all virtually, and I hope after the COVID pandemic, I get an opportunity to visit you in person soon. I am happy to announce that today's webinar has been accredited by ICOG by giving 1 credit points, and I would sincerely urge the team to apply for ICOG credit points for each and every program of Hapur OBGY Society, because whenever any FOXY society applies, there are no charges involved at all. These points are useful for those who wish to join ICOG as fellows, and if you need to collect 100 points over a span of 3 years rather, and then you can certainly fulfill other criteria and become fellows of ICOG. I'm indeed happy to see Dr. Muralidhar Pai, one of the greatest academicians that we have today, who's going to be deliberating on ectopic pregnancy. I had an opportunity to work with Dr. Murli when I was ICOG secretary, and he was our governing council member. Thank you, Murli, for your excellent contribution for all these 3 years. I think today's topic is definitely relevant. Many of us sitting here come from an era when we used to diagnose ectopic pregnancy by doing a paracentesis or culdocentesis, and whenever we found some amount of blood, we always used to open up the patient, and without thinking twice, we used to chop off the tube. Over the years, now things have changed. There are better diagnostic modalities, better ways of managing women who are suffering from ectopic pregnancy. Of course, Dr. Murli is here to tell us all the details. But as Dr. Asha said earlier, we try and aim to preserve the fertility. Of course, the woman's life is of prime importance, but at the same time, we must try our efforts and do our best to prevent the problems of infertility in such women. So once again, thank you, Team Hapur, for inviting me here. It's indeed an honor for me to be here, and my best wishes for the program, and happy learning to all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parag, for so lovely words and aspiring words for such a small society to come over here. It's really honor for us. So for our next guest of honor is Dr. Ritu Khanna. I am delighted to introduce Dr. Ritu. Dr. Ritu ka Dr. Ritu's CV. Dr. Anjana. Yes. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Dr. Ritu ka.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I am
You
delighted.
started.
Yes, I am delighted to introduce Dr. Ritu Khanna, our guest of honor of today's webinar. She is an accomplished infertility specialist. She is the director of Khanna Medical Center and Fertility Clinic. She has been she had training in various centers in India and abroad, also in Belgium. She had so many key position in key educational position as chairpersons, FOGSI Food and Drug Medico Surgical Equipment Committee. She has honor of Secretary's Society of Fetal Medicine UP chapter. She has been Vice President Women Doctors Wing, Banaras. She is executive member of UPCOG. She's been Vice President of Banaras Society from 19 to 20 and Secretary from before that 18 to 90. She's been Joint Treasurer of the Indian Fertility Society also. So she has she was
Ma'am, you're
secretary.
not audible.
We can hear her. It's
You
not
can
me.
hear her. Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear her.
Am I?
Yes, madam.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Acha. She is secretary of IFS UP chapter in 2016. She's been scientific secretary
Ma'am,
IMS.
something has happened. You're not audible.
You are clearly audible,
Audible to
ma'am.
all?
Please go ahead.
Yes.
You are clearly audible. Who is saying she's
Anjana
not
ma'am,
audible?
she is audible.
She is very clearly audible, loud and
audible.
very loud and clear.
You're not
Thank
audible.
you, thank
She is
you.
very loud and clear.
She's secretary IWS
Madam is loud
chapter
and clear.
2016. She's organizing secretary Fertivision 2016 and UPCOG in 2019.
मतलब
She's
कोई भी
worked
मेरी
on-
आवाज
She's working on exclusively on single embryo transfer. She's the recipient of various awards to name Best Chapter Award as Secretary IFS UP Chapter at Fertivision 2015, IFS Best Executive Award 2016, Dr. B.C. Rai Memorial Award 2018 for outstanding contribution in the field of obs-gynae, a Best Paper Award UPCOG 2020, Presidential Award 2021 by IMA Banaras for exemplary good work and services in the field of gynecology. She has published many papers in the field of male and female infertility. She published her first Indian study on role of quantifying management in fertility and presented many papers in ISAR, IFS and ACOG. Her field of interest is in fertility. She has keen interest in enhancing fertility surgery, endoscopy and ART. And welcome to you, ma'am, for this budding society. And there you have innumerable contribution to the field of OBG that cannot be summarized so soon. So ma'am,
you.
please come and say a few things to us.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for those lovely words. And it's such a pleasure to be in this budding society with 21 members, but I can see so many others joining us. And thanks a lot to Hapur Obstetric Gynec Society, and especially the energetic, dedicated president, Dr. Asha Mishra. And also I can see the dynamic secretary, Dr. Anjana, for inviting me here. And my due regards to Dr. Chief Guest, Dr. Parag, who is so vibrant and humble, and so good to have a prolific speaker, Dr. Murlidhar Paisa, who's a stalwart, a great academician whom we always love to listen to you. And also the esteemed chairpersons, Dr. Manju Sharma, Dr. Namita, Dr. Nidhi, so loving and hardworking. Good to see you all here. Dr. Sarita Tyagi is a wonderful presenter. I think will make us rack our brains with all the case scenarios. And congratulations to the whole team, along with Dr. Vimalesh, Dr. Renu, and Dr. Deepshika for this wonderful academic meet on the ectopic pregnancy. This is a subject which needs so many critical decisions, and we have Dr. Muralidhar Pai sir with us to clear all these dilemmas into our minds. And I wish this program a great success. Thank you once again for inviting me.
Thank you so much for the lovely words.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Renu Bansal to kindly introduce our chairperson for this session by Dr. Muralidhar. Renu? Renu, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Good
Introduce.
evening, respected seniors, dear friends and juniors. Me, Dr. Renu Bansal, on behalf of Hapur OBGY Society, welcomes Dr. Manju Sharma. It's a great moment of pleasure for me to invite her as chairperson for our very first session at Topic Pregnancy, its diagnosis and management. She is a renowned consultant of Shanti Mukund Hospital, Delhi, and she's practicing for more than 30 years. Sada Pranam, ma'am. I welcome you. Dr. Manju. Namaskar, ma'am.
Dr. Manju.
सबको मेरा प्रणाम. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Am I?
Namaskar.
Yes,
Namaskar,
yes.
Dr. Manju.
I'm so happy to be a part of this pertinent topic, Dr. Asha, and the whole Hapur Society. So about ectopic, there is a saying that pregnancy in a fallopian tube is a black cat on a dark night. It may make its presence felt in subtle ways and leap at you. It may slink past unobserved. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Although it's difficult to distinguish from cats of other colors, but illumination clearly
Please.
identifies it. And today we have our esteemed speaker, Dr. Muralidhar Pai, who will illuminate us on this very pertinent topic on the diagnosis and recent management of ectopic pregnancy. Can I have a CV of Dr. Pai?
I'm having some problem. Yeah, is it not visible?
No, okay, I have his CV. Can I see?
Yeah,
can I
yeah.
see in my file? I can't see on the screen. Is it there on the
Yeah,
screen?
that. I'm trying to see, settle it because net.
Madam, it is
You
enough to
just read
say
it.
I am from
Dr.
Sikkim Manipal Institute of
Dr.
Medical
Pai, I
Science.
have your CV.
You
Dr.
just
Pai, I
read
have
it.
the CV in
You
my
just
phone.
read it.
Let me. You need no introduction at all. Dr. Pai is a dean of Sikkim Manipal University of Medicine, professor of OBS and Gynae, professor and head departments of OBG, KMC Manipal, India, 2016 to 2021, and MMMC, Malaika, Malaysia. He is a founder and current chairman, Karnataka College of Gynae, Royal College of Gynae, so founder, medical superintendent, Central Referral Hospital, Sikkim, chairman, medical education committee, South Asia Federation of OBS and Gynae, member governing council of Indian College of OBS and Gynae 2017 to 21, national chairman for Public Awareness Committee 2004. May I request all to mute, please? He has got over 500 guest lectures and 175 publications in his name. He is the author of Holland and Bruce OBS 4th edition, OBS and Gynae PMFU 1st edition. He is a best outgoing MD candidate 1989. He is a best teacher 8 times, best teaching material 3 times, best research Foxy Corion National Award for both junior and senior awards. 34 years of teaching, 30 years experience as an examiner of MBBS, MCH, PhD, DNB, and FNB. Dr. Pai, the stage is all yours. We just want to be illuminated with your beautiful talk. Thank you
very
so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. I, at the outset, would like to thank Dr. Anjana Saxena, ma'am, and Dr. Asha Mishra, ma'am, and Dr. Manju, ma'am, for inviting me to this particular webinar. I personally believe there is nobody small, nobody is big. And I really find that it is my good fortune that I have been invited by a place or a society of which I had not heard the name at all. And I was wondering, where is Hapur? I searched, and then even today I asked where it is. So I'm really humbled by your love. Without knowing me personally, you have called me, and I'm really grateful to you for that. I hope I will do justice for your expectations. I'll be talking on, so ask him to make me the host so that I can share my CV, I mean PPT.
Slides.
Yeah. So
Renu?
host has disabled participant screen sharing. So please, I request
Renu?
to make me as the host.
Renu?
Yes, ma'am.
Make host.
नहीं, आप ही तो host बनाएंगे, ma'am. You are the host. हाँ, ये.
So make me host, make me co-host. Make Dr. Muralidhar Pai co-host.
Okay, ma'am.
Dr. Anjana, you will make him host.
Okay.
Still, I'm not able to share.
Sir, wait, sir,
Yeah. Okay. As Manju madam said, one of my slides shows that ectopic pregnancy is like a black cat in the pitch darkness. So Dr. Pratap used to say that, and I have put it in my slide. Still not able to share. Is there a tech support? Yeah, now I am able to share. Thank you very much. Yeah, so you all can see my slides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll be touching mainly on diagnosis and management rather than on the etiology and other things, because everybody knows about that. So most important thing is the diagnosis and management. Ectopic pregnancy is 90%, 96% of the time is tubal, but it can be uterine ectopic. Yes, this is a new terminology I learned from my daughter. What is this uterine ectopic? The so-called interstitial part of the tube is also considered a cornual ectopic pregnancy, or it can be a rudimentary horn. There can be what is called intramural, which is extremely rare. Less than 50 cases are reported in the world, but that is a true uterine ectopic pregnancy. Then, of course, there can be cervical ectopic, scar ectopic. Most of us have seen this. Then the next organ, of course, is ovary, ovarian ectopic. And finally, when these ectopic pregnancies, they slowly rupture without any dramatic consequences and get anchored on the peritoneum to become what is called secondary abdominal pregnancy. I have seen only one abdominal pregnancy in my life. Finally, there can be a heterotopic pregnancy, that is one ectopic plus an intrauterine pregnancy. The diagnosis obviously is by combination of serum quantitative HCG and transvaginal ultrasound findings. Yes, it sounds so simple, but it can be very, very complex and difficult. Both of them can mislead us. Both beta HCG as well as ultrasound can mislead us. The clinical presentation, of course, is again not very different. All that you will have is vaginal bleeding and or abdominal pain. Now, this can be a simple abortion also. This can be an molar pregnancy also. And this can be an ectopic pregnancy also. That's exactly why all our teachers have taught us you should always keep ectopic pregnancy in the back of your mind unless proved others. And I want to add to that, from menarche till menopause, because I have seen a 12-year-old girl having ectopic pregnancy. Most of them can be asymptomatic, and that adds to the complication, and that adds to our problem in diagnosing them. As Manju madam said, it is like a black cat in the pitch darkness. Only when you throw torch,
Right.
the eyes will be very bright and you can say that there may be a cat. We have to always consider ectopic pregnancy if any patient of reproductive age, as I just now said, from menarche till menopause, with vaginal bleeding and or abdominal pain, plus having following characteristics. Is pregnant but does not have confirmed intrauterine pregnancy. So the urinary pregnancy test is positive, but ultrasound is not showing an intrauterine sac. Is pregnant and that pregnancy was due to IVF. Yes, lot of care is taken while doing the embryo transfer, but sometimes if you transfer very high, the cornua sucks these embryos and there can be a chance of ectopic pregnancy. And finally, pregnancy status is uncertain, particularly if amenorrhea of more than 4 weeks preceded by the current vaginal bleeding. That's why we say there may or may not be a period of amenorrhea in ectopic pregnancy. Still, it can be an ectopic pregnancy. In other words, I can simply tell you any deviation from normalcy in the reproductive age group, we have to keep ectopic pregnancy in the back of our mind. Presenting with hemodynamic instability, I can tell you a story, what actually happened in our hospital. A reproductive age lady was brought with shock to our casualty or emergency medicine department. They admitted her in ICU. They suspected intraperitoneal bleed. They thought of everything on earth, including aortic rupture, but they didn't think of ectopic pregnancy. Finally, when obstetricians were called, the first thing we said, it could be a case of it could be a case of ectopic pregnancy, and we were right. From that day, we have made a rule that whenever a patient is brought in shock, abdominal pain, vaginal bleeding, to emergency department, we have to do what is called serum beta-HCG. Don't call it pregnancy test. The lady may be offended, they may not accept, but simply say, I am going to do a serum beta-HCG. If it is more than 5 milli-international units, then you have to suspect that she is pregnant. And since there is shock, there is intraperitoneal bleed, it must be a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. And this is present in 18% of the patients having this problem, that is hemodynamic instability and acute abdomen. Beware, early pregnancy symptoms may be less common in them because they have less progesterone, less estradiol, and less HCG. That's why you may not get history of nausea, vomiting, and typical history that you would get in a case of pregnancy. That's exactly why I'm repeating myself. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time I'm repeating. Any deviation from normal vaginal bleeding, any pain abdomen in a lady in the reproductive age group, you have to always consider ectopic pregnancy first. You may not spell it out, but it has to be kept in the back of your mind. It's always worthwhile doing a serum beta-HCG Because if you tell, I want to do a pregnancy test, they may refuse. At presentation, it can be an unruptured ectopic or a ruptured ectopic. Ruptured ectopic is 18% of the ectopic pregnancies. It can result in a life-threatening intra-abdominal hemorrhage. So we have to be careful, and we should know what are the presentations of ruptured ectopic pregnancy. A sudden, severe, and persistent abdominal pain. Sometimes after rupture, the pain may disappear. The shooting pain may disappear, but there will be a constant dull abdominal pain due to the stretching of the peritoneum due to the collection of blood. Symptoms or signs suggestive of hemodynamic compromise, such as feeling faint, hypotension, tachycardia. Shoulder pain due to diaphragmatic irritation, that is again due to collection of blood in the peritoneal cavity. Urge to defecate. The blood in the pouch of Douglas may stimulate the rectum, and patient may feel like passing motion as she feels during second stage of labor. Eventually, patient will slip into hypotension and shock unless you diagnose the case and start treating the problem. But abdominally, often you may not find much, but once the blood collection increases, there can be lower abdominal pain or tenderness. With significant bleeding, there will be diffuse distension, localized and or rebound tenderness. So you can have variety of presentations in ectopic pregnancy, especially ruptured one, and only a person who is smart enough to suspect ectopic pregnancy can diagnose ectopic pregnancy. It is always a diagnosis of intuition. The junior faculty will always be surprised when a senior person says it is a case of ruptured ectopic. They will wonder how he diagnosed it. We diagnose it just by intuition, not by ultrasound, not by HCG, just because of intuition, which is because of experience. The differential diagnosis, of course, physiologically, we think of implantation bleeding, spontaneous abortion, as I said earlier, cervical, vaginal, or uterine pathology, may be a case of cervical polyp giving rise to vaginal bleeding, subchorionic hematoma, which will also have bleeding and pain abdomen, and of course, the other first trimester complication, gestational trophoblastic disease, which will have very high HCG. It can be non-obstetric problems like urinary tract infection, which is giving rise to pain abdomen, kidney stones, which will have a very bad, sharp, acute, spasmodic pain, diverticulitis, appendicitis, ovarian neoplasms, sometimes rupture or the infection, hemorrhage into the ovarian disc. Leiomyomas, they can have pain due to stretching of the round ligament, or they can undergo torsion if it is a pedunculated one, or all of us know about red degeneration. They do not have accompanied vaginal bleeding. That's how you know it is probably not ectopic pregnancy. Usually there will be some amount of bleeding because of lack of support by HCG or progesterone to the decidua in the uterine cavity. Whereas in these conditions, there may not be bleeding, only pain abdomen. How to manage? Diagnostic evaluations should be aimed at confirming pregnancy. As I said, you have to do beta HCG. That is the best. Suppose you think that a beta HCG will take time, go ahead and do a urinary pregnancy test. Evaluate the patient for hemodynamic instability. You have to try to find out the site of ectopic pregnancy by ultrasound, but you must remember in 40% of the cases, it can be pregnancy of unknown location that is going to become ectopic pregnancy. Serial transvaginal sonography and HCG, what we call beta HCG doubling, time. We have to repeat beta HCG once in 48 hours and see how it doubles. I'm going to talk in detail about that little later. People believe in doing serum progesterone, but definition of low progesterone is unclear. If you are doing a thesis or an experimental study, you can go ahead and do. As a routine, we don't do this. Lab investigations, of course, CBC, blood group and type, coagulation profile, because you know, lot of blood transfusion may be required, component therapy is required, and the patient can slip into DIC as well. Finally, a pre-treatment LFT, because one of the conservative managements of ectopic pregnancy is giving injection methotrexate, and before giving that, we must have a baseline liver function test. In patients who are hemodynamically stable, the step one is, of course, a detailed history, wherein 50% may not have any risk factor, no PID, no tubal surgeries, no nothing, yet they can have ectopic pregnancy. Physical examination. You should be very gentle and careful while doing PV, because inadvertently you can cause rupture of the ectopic pregnancy. On careful examination and gentle movement of the cervix, you will feel cervical motion tenderness. Step 2, you have to do beta HCG, and probably you have to repeat beta HCG once in 48 hours till you are very clear about the diagnosis of ectopic pregnancy. Transvaginous sonography goes without saying, though its sensitivity is very low, 10% only, but its specificity is 95.2% when the HCG is more than 2000 milli international units. What it means is, when the HCG is more than 2000 milli international units per ml, if you see a sac, a yolk sac, and a fetal pole, specificity goes to 95.2%. And if you see the pulsation, nothing like that. It is 100%. How do you diagnose? As I said earlier, ectopic is suspected in a pregnant patient with no evidence of intrauterine pregnancy on transvaginal sonography, and any of the following. Number 1, visualization of a complex inhomogeneous extra ovarian adnexal mass, which is most of the time seen. I can put it as 89% of the time it is seen. An extra ovarian adnexal mass containing an empty gestational sac, what we call tubal ring, sometimes it is called ring of fire and things like that. That also is diagnostic. Finally, if there is intraperitoneal blood on transvaginal sonography, the diagnosis is almost sure of a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Abnormal rise in beta HCG. I will tell you soon what do you mean by abnormal rise. That is less than 35%. According to NICE guidelines, it is less than 63%. They are little generous. Expected rise is dependent on the initial beta HCG levels. What do you mean by that? If the initial beta HCG was less than 1500, you don't expect a big rise, just a 49%. But if the initial beta HCG was already 1500 to 3000, that means thereafter you cannot expect much rise, it is 40%. But if the beta HCG was already more than 3000, the expected rise will not be more than 33%, because whatever rise had to take place, it has already taken place. It is an ectopic pregnancy. In other words, once the beta HCG is more than 3000, you better see an intrauterine gestational sac. If you don't see and simply repeat beta HCG, only 33% of the time you may see an optimal rise of more than 33%. So that's exactly why after 48 hours, if the rise is less than 35%, it is mostly in the range of ectopic pregnancy according to most, but according to NICE guidelines, If the rise is less than 63%, it is in favor of ectopic pregnancy. I am giving you both the values. How do you confirm? Of course, visualization of an extrauterine gestational sac, but that is not enough. You have to see a yolk sac. Better would be to see an embryo with or without heartbeat. If the heartbeat is there, even a blind person can diagnose ectopic pregnancy. A positive HCG and no products of conception on uterine aspiration. Now, this is little controversial. Many people do not subscribe to this because in case there is a intrauterine pregnancy, you are unnecessarily disturbing that. So many people don't believe in this, but I have just put it for the sake of those who believe in this. Visualization at surgery, of course, this is like a retrospective diagnosis, usually performed for patients with hemodynamics instability with histologic confirmation following resection of ectopic pregnancy in tissue. This is no great thing. You have already seen an ectopic pregnancy. It is already late. Best is to diagnose by ultrasound. Now I talk in detail about discriminatory zone. There are a lot of numbers in different textbooks. Let me clarify it once for all. It again depends upon, as I said, the initial beta HCG. When the initial beta HCG is 1500, which is very low, the gestational sac visualization is only in 80% of the time. But when the beta HCG goes to 2000, 91% of the time you must see a gestational sac. And when it becomes more than 3510 to be precise, 99% of the cases will show an intrauterine gestation. If they don't show, that means it is an ectopic pregnancy. The suspicion becomes strong. Thereafter, the doubling will be less than 33%. So setting the zone at 3510 increases the ability to diagnose a live intrauterine pregnancy on TVS, but also increases the risk of delaying a diagnosis of an ectopic pregnancy. That is exactly why most of the textbooks say 1500 is the discriminatory zone, wherein at least in 80% of the cases, you are supposed to see an intrauterine pregnancy. If you don't see, brand it as a case of pregnancy of unknown location, and thereafter start doing doubling time. And as I said in the earlier slide, if the initial beta HCG was less than 1500, you can wait up to 66% or 63% rise. But the initial beta HCG is higher than that. You can start diagnosing ectopic pregnancy if there is no rise of 35%. So I've given you all the values and you have to calculate based on the given case, based on the initial beta HCG. All said and done, if you are doing TAS, which I don't think anybody now relies upon, most of us have TVS. In the olden days, if the beta HCG was 6500, you must see a gestational sac even by transabdominal ultrasonography. Progesterone levels. I promised you to talk more about progesterone levels. For bleeding or pain abdomen and influences you TVS, progesterone, if you do, and if it is less than 3.2 to 6 nanogram, it had a sensitivity of 75% and a specificity of 98%. For patients with bleeding or pain alone, without doing an ultrasound, if the progesterone is less than 10 nanograms, it had a sensitivity of 67% and a specificity of 96%. Well, most of us believe in beta HCG rather than progesterone. If at all, you may do both rather than doing progesterone alone. Progesterone levels, sensitivity and specificity of a low serum progesterone concentration for predicting non-viable pregnancy in spontaneously pregnant patients are different from those who have undergone controlled ovarian hyperstimulation for IVF or IUI, because we dump progesterone after IVF. you will be misled by the high levels of progesterone in a post-IVF pregnancy. I hope I am clear. So if it is a post-IVF pregnancy, better not to rely on progesterone, because we are injecting or we are giving vaginal progesterone, we are giving oral progesterone for luteal phase support. So progesterone levels are misleading in an IVF pregnancy. Uterine aspiration, again, I told you it is very, very controversial. Many of us do not believe in this as a diagnostic tool, but there are some people, even now they believe in this. They say curettage aspiration as a diagnostic tool is limited by the potential of disruption of a viable pregnancy only on patients with both an HCG concentration below the discriminatory zone and a low doubling rate. Then probably it may be an intrauterine pregnancy going in for abortion, and to rule that out, you may go for a uterine aspiration. Having said all this, it's a very, very, very difficult call to make. Approximately 30% of these patients have a non-viable intrauterine pregnancy and remainder have an ectopic. If the report comes as intrauterine pregnancy, you are happy, you pat yourself on your back saying that I did a great thing. But in 70% of the patients, it may still be an ectopic pregnancy. So whoever believes in doing uterine aspiration, you have to keep in mind 70% of the time, there is still a chance of ectopic pregnancy. Sensitivity of curettage in finding chronic chorionic villi is only 70%, and in PIPEL, it drops down to 30%. Many believe it is more practical and less invasive to continue observation or administer one dose of methotrexate than to perform aspiration. We have now a wonderful drug called methotrexate. There is no need to do uterine aspiration. If you have doubt about ectopic pregnancy, which is very, very small, and if you are very sure that it is a non-viable intrauterine pregnancy, better to give one dose methotrexate rather than performing an aspiration. The side effects of one dose of methotrexate are negligible. Aspiration carries a risk of intrauterine adhesion later in life. There was no significant benefit of one approach over the other, aspiration or no aspiration before methotrexate. Don't do that. If you have clear indication of ectopic pregnancy, either simply continue in an expected manner or give one dose of methotrexate than doing aspiration is the final concrete answer. What about cultosynthesis? Dr. Parag Binwale said about cultosynthesis. Yes, when I was a PG, we used to do that. And I used to really not like it because it is always inconclusive. Whenever you do a cultosynthesis, there will be some amount of blood. You don't know whether it is a old blood, fresh blood, whether blood is due to hitting a vessel in the vagina itself. So historically, cultosynthesis was used to detect blood in the posterior cul-de-sac. This finding can be easily demonstrated by TVS nowadays. Blood in cul-de-sac may also be the result of ruptured ovarian cyst. Therefore, cultosynthesis positive for blood is non-diagnostic and not used anymore. That's the final. Now, I talked about step 1, history taking, physical examination. Step 2 is beta HCG and TVS. What is step 3? Step 3 is nothing but follow-up testing. Serial HCG every 48 to 72 hours. Most of us do every 48 hours. A rise of more than 35% means it is a normal early intrauterine pregnancy. A plateauing or a decrease of HCG by 15% is consistent with failed pregnancy.
जिस जगह एक्सपेक्ट करो ना उस जगह नहीं होता बुरा नहीं था लेकिन हाँ खर्चा ही निकला बस.
Dr. Kamlesh Kabra, please mute yourself.
आगरा में मैं सोची रवीन आ रही है गुलबानो जो मैंने आपको ब्यूटीफुल दिखाई थी.
Kindly unmute. Mute
Yes,
yourself.
Sir, now you unmute yourself, sir. Dr. Muralidhar, please unmute yourself, sir.
So,
Yes.
a rise of more than 35% means intrauterine pregnancy. A decrease by 15% means failing pregnancy wherever it is. But a suboptimal rise or a suboptimal decrease is pointing towards ectopic pregnancy. I will repeat. What it means, I'll repeat with an example. Suppose the original beta HCG was 1000 for easy understanding. You repeat it after 48 hours. If the rise is 1500, which is more than 35%, means this pregnancy is mostly an intrauterine pregnancy. After another 48 hours or 72 hours, we will be able to see an intrauterine gestational sac. Or if the beta HCG goes down by 15%, that means from 1000 it goes down to 600. That means wherever it is failing. Nothing to worry. But if there is a suboptimal rise, that means it is rising, but it is 1200. Or a suboptimal decrease, that means it is decreasing, but it is 900. Then it is a case of ectopic pregnancy. I hope I am clear. So natural history, what happens? If left untreated, an ectopic pregnancy in fallopian tube can progress into tubal abortion. As I said, this will be not very dramatic. Expulsion through fimbria can also happen. This can be followed by resorption of entire ectopic tissue or reimplantation of trophoblast onto abdominal cavity and become an abdominal pregnancy, secondary abdominal pregnancy, or a secondary ovarian pregnancy. Or occasionally, it may require a surgical intervention because the bleeding would be so much, like a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. The second natural history is a tubal rupture, major cause of maternal mortality in the first trimester. And finally, a small percentage of cases can regress spontaneously, but this is very, very unpredictable. So nobody can sit on an ectopic pregnancy. It is like sitting on a bomb, ticking bomb. Ovarian ectopic requires a special mention. Luckily, it is rare, 1 in 2100 or 1 in 60,000 pregnancies, and accounts for only 1 to 3% of all ectopic pregnancies. The diagnosis is typically made at the time of surgery because most of us get confused whether it is an ovarian or whether it is a tubal. Many of us diagnose it at laparotomy or laparoscopy. Strict histopathologic criteria are used to distinguish ovarian pregnancy from those originating in the fallopian tubes. The exact diagnosis is not clinically important since these pregnancies are usually treated by surgical excision. What it means is whether it is ovarian or tubal, we are finally treating with surgical excision. Methotrexate has been successful in case reports. Usually ovarian ectopics grow for a little longer duration and methotrexate may not be very successful in them. There are some case reports, however. So Spielberg criteria for ovarian ectopic is the fallopian tube on the ipsilateral side must be intact. The fetal sac must be intra-ovarian. The ovary must be connected to the uterus by ovarian ligament. And ovarian tissue must be located by pathologist in the sac wall. So this criteria is a must before you publish it as a case of ovarian ectopic. There is something called interstitial ectopic, also called chordal pregnancy. It accounts again for just 1 to 3% like ovarian pregnancies. Difficult to distinguish from eccentrically positioned IUP. So one has to be careful before going for surgical intervention or methotrexate. Usually presents later in gestation, 8 to 10 weeks, with rupture occurring in approximately 20 to 50% of the cases, but most of the ruptures occur within 12 weeks of pregnancy. The delay in diagnosis is an average of 4 days from a typical ectopic of the ampullary or ischemial region. Screening of asymptomatic patients is not routinely called for because otherwise we will have no other job than simply doing beta HCG in every single lady. You would do it only in cases where you suspect. The expectations to this are patients at high risk of an ectopic pregnancy such as IVF pregnancy, with no clear-cut intrauterine pregnancy, pregnancy after reconstructive surgeries of fallopian tubes, or prior history of ectopic pregnancy, the same clinical protocol, that is once in 48 hours, raise of 35%, drop in 15%, suboptimal rise, suboptimal drop, you suspect ectopic pregnancy. Undesired pregnancy. In a patient with pregnancy of unknown location and in whom pregnancy is undesired, expedite active management can be offered. That means patient says, whether it is ectopic or intrauterine, I don't want this pregnancy. In that case, why wait? She doesn't want either way. So diagnostic uterine aspiration to be done first to rule out intrauterine pregnancy. Later, with laparoscopy if an adnexal mass is present, or you can give methotrexate. Why wait? She doesn't want this pregnancy anyway. It may reduce the number of follow-up tests also. That's why there's no point in wasting time. Now with COVID-19, ectopics are increasing because patients are not coming to us very early. Delay in diagnosis of ectopic pregnancy, reduced access to routine prenatal visits and first trimester TVS, patients' reluctance to obtain medical care during pandemic. So they come only once it is ruptured. Now I come to the management part, choosing the treatment. The three approaches to the management of ectopic pregnancy are, number one is surgery. I am putting it first because most of the patients will ultimately require one or other surgery, maybe salpingostomy in the past. Nowadays, most of us are going for salpingectomy. I will come to that why. Second approach is methotrexate. This is possible when the patient is willing for follow-up, when the patient has no other comorbidities, patient has come to you very early before rupture of the ectopic pregnancy. Third is expected management. I will give clear-cut indications for that. Methotrexate versus surgery. Treatment with methotrexate has comparable efficacy to surgery as per Cochrane review. That's exactly why it has become very popular. And the results in similar fertility outcome. As Asha madam said, most of us are worried about the post-ectopic fertility outcomes. So methotrexate gives us a very good management of the ectopic on hand as well as future fertility. It is preferred when patient is hemodynamically stable. This is the most important statement. If the patient is not hemodynamically stable, you don't treat her with medical management. You require surgical intervention, laparoscopy or laparotomy, depending upon your skill. HCG concentration is less than 5,000. Very easy to remember. No fetal cardiac activity detected on TVS, because it is very difficult. If the baby is alive, methotrexate will not act on a normal growing villus. Ectopic mass is less than 3 to 4 centimeters. For easy remembrance, we can say less than 5 centimeters and less than 5,000 HCG, but preferably less than 3 centimeters, I would go. Patients are willing, this is a very important statement, and able to comply with post-treatment follow-up. Willing is not enough. They should be able to come to you, and they have access to emergency medical services in case they get into acute abdomen in the midnight. All the three conditions are important: willingness, ability to come, access for emergency. Only then can you give methotrexate. It is contraindicated and surgery is required if patients are hemodynamically unstable, everything opposite of what I said in the previous slide. Heterotrophic pregnancy with coexisting viable intrauterine pregnancy. It should not be given because a normal intrauterine pregnancy will be unnecessarily disturbed, and not only that, there can be teratogenicity. Signs and symptoms of impending or ongoing rupture. Better to do surgical treatment. Clinically important abnormalities in baseline hematologic, renal, hepatic laboratory where methotrexate is contraindicated. Immunodeficiency, active pulmonary, peptic ulcer disease, again, because methotrexate cannot be used in these cases. Hypersensitive methotrexate, of course, nobody dare use it. Breastfeeding, because methotrexate can pass through the breastfeeding and the baby can get it. Sometimes what happens, she's not using contraceptives, she's lactating still, and she gets pregnant, and it is an ectopic pregnancy. You should not give methotrexate. The therapy includes single dose of 50 milligrams per meter square or 1 milligram per kg, or a multiple dose. It is reserved only for interstitial or cervical pregnancies, which are tougher to tackle. Factors that impact efficacy are high HCG concentration. Higher the concentration, more methotrexate is required. Fetal cardiac activity, chances of failure is more because this is a stronger pregnancy. Large size, more than 3.5 centimeters, as I told you, 3 to 4, I said the average is 3.5. And already there is peritoneal fluid. The amount of POD is controversial, but if the fluid is already there, it's an indication that it is already ruptured ectopic. You are wasting time by giving methotrexate. Others, like yolk sac is seen, ischemial ectopic, high folic acid, rate of rise of prior to methotrexate. If the beta HCG was rising very high, methotrexate is not going to be useful. How to follow up? Of course, after 7 days, you have to repeat beta HCG. Thereafter, every week. If there is a rise of 15%, if there is more than 15% decline, if there is a more than 15% decline in beta HCG from day 7 to 14, you have to do weekly until the level is undetectable. Usually it takes around 7 weeks. If there is less than 15% HCG decline from day 7 to 14, you have to consider additional dose of methotrexate. If 3 weekly values are similar, also you have to give additional dosage, but a maximum of 3 doses only. If the HCG is rising, a TVS should be performed. Maybe you will see a big sac, fetal pulsation, stop methotrexate, go for surgical intervention. If HCG does not decline to 0, sometimes it may be a new pregnancy. You have to exclude that. While on methotrexate, of course, you have to avoid vaginal intercourse because that sac can rupture. New conception should be avoided. Contraception should be advised. Pelvic examination also should be avoided. Theoretically, there's a possibility of rupture ectopic. Sun exposure to limit the risk of methotrexate dermatitis. And of course, folic acid is an antagonist for methotrexate that should be avoided. Even non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which will complicate the issue. The outcomes are really not so bad. A single dose of systemic methotrexate was significantly less successful than laparoscopic salpingostomy. However, when additional doses were given, if a single dose was unsuccessful, there was comparable efficacy. So it depends upon how we use methotrexate. If you are very rigid about single dose, then you may have failure. But if you are willing to follow properly and use additional doses, the success is comparable. There was no significant difference between systemic methotrexate in a fixed multiple dose regime and surgery. So we have to choose our patients. Of course, other outcomes are in spite of methotrexate, 31.9%, 9 per 100,000 pregnancies, there was unfortunate tubal rupture. So that's exactly what I meant by we have to closely monitor the patient. Patient should be coming to you as often as you call, because just because you have given methotrexate, don't think that there won't be rupture. There will be rupture in 31 per 100,000 pregnancies. Ovarian reserve does not appear to compromise, so no need to worry about it. Fertility rates are similar compared to surgical treatment, and patients with ectopic first pregnancies had increased risk of preterm birth. Subsequent ectopic, same for both medical and surgical therapies, though there is no difference. Now I come to surgery, salpingectomy, where you remove the tube, or salpingostomy, where you just put an incision on the anti-mesenteric border of the tube with a hope to save the tube. You just evacuate the ectopic pregnancy, don't disturb the lumen, allow it to either heal on its own, or sometimes you may cauterize sometimes you may suture as well. Can be done laparotomy wise or laparoscopically. Small risk of retained trophoblastic tissue and an increased risk of recurrent ectopic if you do salpingostomy. Both procedures appear to result in similar subsequent fertility. Traditionally, salpingectomy has been standard procedure, but salpingostomy is preferred because it's a conservative surgical option. Having said that, many now fear if you do salpingostomy, it's an invitation for next ectopic pregnancy, because there can be some sort of scarring in that particular tube. And should the pregnancy happen in that tube, then the zygote may get stuck there and you will have one more ectopic. So many of us now rethinking, they are now thinking better to do salpingectomy only. After all, we have got 2 tubes and there can be successful pregnancy. Expectant management is the last part of the topic, is an option only for a small portion of the patients with ectopic pregnancy or pregnancy of unknown location and a very low risk for tubal rupture. What is that? TVS does not show an extrauterine gestational sac, nor demonstrates an extrauterine mass suspicious for an ectopic pregnancy. HCG is so low, less than 200, and it is declining. And of course, the standard statement comes. Patient is willing and able to attend post-treatment follow-up appointments and have the access to emergency medical services within a reasonable time frame in a case of a ruptured fallopian tube. So only those who are bold and those only clearly evaluate their patients go for expectant management or a methotrexate management. But our factor is one thing, patient factor is another. They should be willing, they should be able to come for follow-up, and they should have an access for emergency medical treatment. So interstitial and other ectopics, multiple dose methotrexate is required because these are stronger ectopics. Success rate is 66 to 100%, may require surgical management if methotrexate fails. What about mifepristone? A small experiments have been done, treatment with methotrexate along with, mifepristone have been investigated. More studies are needed. We do not use it in Manipal right now. There was one more talk which I was impressed. Gefitinib, this is an anti-vascular drug, so it resulted in a faster decline of serum human chorionic gonadotropin, a marker of trophoblastic activity, than treatment of historical controls with methotrexate alone. It may result in interstitial lung disease, particularly in patients with Japanese ancestry. So one has to be careful. It is still in the experimental stage. Thank you very much for your patient listening, and I'll be happy to answer if there are any doubts.
Thank you so much, sir, for that elaborate and very crisp messages given. Wonderful, wonderful. I saw one question in this chat box who has written that after methotrexate, if there is a mass left, like a chronic ectopic, what should be done? Should we remove it surgically or not? This is a question in the chat box.
Very good question. Most of us have faced this problem. What we hope and expect after methotrexate is that the mass will slowly autolyze and resolve itself. But sometimes it won't. It will become like a tubal mole, what I have read in the undergraduate days. And that may remain as a chronic ectopic pregnancy. Also, when you repeat beta HCG, we have seen double-digit beta HCG lurking for a long, long time. Now, what to do with that depends upon patient symptomatology and patient fertility issues. Suppose the patient has a chronic pelvic pain. Obviously, it is due to this particular so-called chronic ectopic pregnancy, and it will not go away just by wishing or by any drugs, including methotrexate. So that has to be removed surgically. I will underline, if the patient has problem. Now, somebody is asking whether GnRH management can be given. Again, GnRH may decrease the gonadotropins, but the problem here is not of gonadotropin. The problem as it has become an organized, some sort of a clot or an organized tissue, it will not have good blood supply also for GnRH to reach the area. So best management of a chronic ectopic is surgical removal, excision. Now the second issue is, suppose the patient has fertility issues also, because she has now got only one tube, which is all right. If she becomes pregnant, fine. If she doesn't become pregnant, then of course, again, some people believe in removing this tube so that the other tube will somehow harbor the fertilization and fruitful pregnancy.
Thank you so much. Dr. Asha Mishra, do you want me to conclude this or is okay?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, is there any role of letrozole in small ectopics? I have read an article that they are using letrozole 2.5 milligram for 10 days. And obviously, there are no complications compared to methotrexate, and it is giving excellent results.
See, these kind of single reports, single papers, which is not substantiated by other authors or not been widely used, is slightly risky sometimes. See, all of us know methotrexate is the strongest drug against the chorionic
It is a lot
villi.
of complications, sir. That's
Yeah.
why we are.
Yeah, see, complication is one thing, but whether it will successfully tackle is another. People have, even people who have used this anti-metabolitic drugs, they have not used it alone. They have used along with.
हाँ तो
So
तुम
if
अपने
at
पे
all, I
ले
have no
सकते हो, होस्ट ऐसे ले लो कहीं मेरा नेट।
डॉक्टर अंजना म्यूट कर लीजिए। डॉक्टर अंजना प्लीज म्यूट योरसेल्फ।
Okay. So I have no idea, or I have not treated with letrozole.
Okay,
but methotrexate plus mifepristone has been used, and methotrexate plus genetifimab is also used.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir?
Dr. Pai, I would like you to bring salpingectomy. We should remove whole of the tube and not let part tube return, because topics are known to occur. What's your opinion about that?
Your voice was breaking. Can you repeat the question, please? Has anybody else heard the question?
Cannot hear you.
Yeah, there was breaking of the voice.
Sir, excuse me, she is saying when there is a ruptured ectopic or not responding to the medical treatment, should we do the total self-injectomy or the partial? Because in our practice, we have also seen the person who have done the partial self-injectomy. In the remaining part, we had seen the ectopic. Again.
Yeah, so, yeah, of course. When you have decided to remove the tube, it is better to do total salpingectomy rather than partial salpingectomy, unless you feel that a part of the tube is not accessible, but it has to be clearly documented why you did a partial salpingectomy. A salpingostomy is totally different, but when you do salpingectomy, it is better to do total rather than, but it is very, very surprising that they become pregnant. Most of the time, what happens if you leave behind the femoral end, if you just do a segmental resection, there can be recanalization. Sometimes when we do a surgery for recanalization, they won't get patent. But when it is left for natural, they will get somehow to beat the doctors. There will be natural canalization. It is the fimbria which is very, very important. So we have to take care of the fimbria. We have to remove that. And there's no point in just leaving behind any part of the tube actually. Even in post-cesarean hysterectomy, we say better to go for complete hysterectomy rather than subtotal hysterectomy. So when we talk about complete hysterectomy in obstetrics, it is better to do complete or total salpingectomy rather than partial, unless it was surgically difficult.
So my one question to you,
Yes,
Dr. Pai, you know, you had a lot of COVID in Pune. So unruptured pregnancy, ectopic pregnancy with COVID. You prefer the methotrexate? Cannot be. It is an immunosuppressant. So laparoscopy has its own drawback. So what treatment option is there for these patients who are unruptured ectopic with COVID-19?
Yeah, it cannot be a simple answer. I cannot give you a small answer. It will be a very long drawn answer, but to make it simple, it all depends upon the COVID situation of the patient. Now, how bad the patient is, and whether we have how bad the ectopic is, in the sense how urgent it is to tackle. As you correctly said, in a COVID situation where follow-up is a big problem, also the question of immunosuppression or anti-metabolite drug being used. So methotrexate is definitely not in the armamentarium. Some sort of definitive treatment has to be given. Now, whether to go laparoscopically or laparotomy, it depends upon who is arguing the case. A very competent laparoscopic surgeon with good capacity to suck out all the aerosols that are formed, he will still argue, and provided his anesthetist is willing to give the anesthesia, he will still argue that I will tackle anything and everything by laparoscopy only. But then if you are not very sure of your systems, that you are able to take out all the aerosols that are possible in a laparoscopic surgery, it is better, or if you have any slightest doubt, it is better to go for laparotomy. There is not much harm done. We can tackle ectopic pregnancy by just 1 inch or 2 inch incisions. We have done it. You don't have to make a big laparotomy. In fact, if you add all the 3 small incisions that they make and the time they spend on laparoscopy, it will be worse than a simple laparotomy, which you can finish in probably 20 minutes. At laparotomy, you have to simply first catch the tube which is bleeding, and then you go for sucking out of the things. So it all depends upon who is speaking. So there is no answer for this as such. Any answer is correct. Any answer can be wrong.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I hope you agree with me.
Yeah. Individual skill.
Yeah. Skill and facility.
Facility, that too. Dr. Manju, to conclude, please. One more thing, can I ask? Salpingostomy, since we are doing all fertility sparing surgery with the other contralateral tube is compromised, can we add methotrexate also to prevent persistent trophoblast?
No, that's what I have written in one of the slides. Whenever you choose salpingostomy, there have been case series done with or without prior methotrexate. And what you say makes sense, that when we try to save the tube at any cost because that's the only tube available, it makes sense to add methotrexate to take care of the residual trophoblastic tissues, if at all. So that, it's like a double-edged weapon. No harm done anyway. You are removing majority of the ectopic by salpingostomy, and then little bit leftovers can be tackled by methotrexate. Having said that, many people think that methotrexate won't act so well on a dead tissue or on a normal tissue. That's exactly why nowadays, for a leftover placenta in the uterus, people say there is no point in giving methotrexate. Better to go for hysterectomy. That is also advised. So, and with the IVF era, I'm sure Dr. Ritu Khanna will say, remove the tube, I will give them an IVF pregnancy.
Sir, I also have a question.
Yes,
so in nowadays, we are seeing many patients of PUL, for pregnancy of unknown location.
Yes.
No gestational sac, both ovaries are healthy and a very small beta HCG, as you said.
Yes.
And the patient doesn't desire pregnancy. So is it safe to give single dose of methotrexate in those cases?
Yes, that's what I said. In a PUL type of situation where patient does not want pregnancy, whether it is ectopic or uterine pregnancy,
yes, sir.
You can not only give methotrexate, you have to evacuate the uterus also to be on the safer side. So methotrexate will take correct. Methotrexate will take care of the ectopic, and your aspiration will take care of the possible intrauterine pregnancy. So it is like a double-edged or double management.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, sir, one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, if a patient had suffered already with the ruptured ectopic or the failed ectopic management, we have done the self-injectomy. Although, as we all know, there is any pathology in the pelvis, or there is some cause of causing the ectopic pregnancy. Like
Yes.
we have removed one tube, and patient is primary, she was a case of, she was nulliparous.
Yes.
And for the other tube, is there any prophylactic measure to prevent the ectopic in other side in the future time? Like we have seen, once a patient had suffered with ectopic on one side, and there she has come so many times, she come with ectopic on other side also. So is there any measure to prevent the ectopic in other side, sir?
Yeah, actually, unfortunately, there are no very successful preventive measures as such. What you're saying is, if a person has got the background to have an ectopic pregnancy, the only thing that we can probably do is do the adhesiolysis in between the, after the post-ectopic. But a person having tendency for adhesions, the adhesiolysis itself will ask for more adhesion. And you may treat an infection, but then infection only if it is current and active infection, you can tackle that. Now, if the tubes are some sort of already damaged and hydrosulfing is there, then you know that this tube is a good recipe for future ectopic pregnancy, the leftover tube, the remaining tube. So I would rather put it this way. The only prevention of ectopic, it may be a drastic, it may sound, I'm very drastic. The only way to prevent ectopic in the leftover tube, where the patient has a bad peritoneum, a peritoneum which is very conducive for future ectopic pregnancy, better to remove that tube. But then she is forced to have IVF. There are no very good methods to prevent ectopic pregnancy. The only way, even if I remove the tube, I have given you a big list of other ectopics, uterine ectopics, interstitial ectopic, corneal ectopic. IVF is not a total 100% safety from ectopic. IVF themselves is a cause of ectopic nowadays.
Yes, sir.
So,
sir, I have experience of infertility from I am doing infertility treatment from last around more than 15 years. So what I used to do after the laparoscopic self-injectomy, after 2 months or 1.5 months, I have evaluated the PID or the chronic tuberculosis or chronic PID causes. If there is no active lesion, then after 2 months, I used to do the SSG. I used to push the antibiotic and steroid. What I used to do the SSG for the evaluation of the infertility patient. So I used to do the SSG after 2 months of the surgery. So I think in my practice, I didn't see in those patients recurrent ectopic.
I can only say you have been very lucky. Patient has been very lucky. We used to do this so-called tubal canalization or tubal flushing and all that when I was a PG.
Yes,
but
sir.
That has not been practiced now. I don't know whether it has been restarted, but it's just coincidental maybe that you just flushed the tubes with antibiotics and other things, and probably she was not to have ectopic pregnancy, she didn't have. But
the purpose is this, sir. Purpose is this: if there is any mucus plug or if there is any inflammation in the mucosa or around the fimbria, it will dissolve and it will help.
Yeah, I agree. That will definitely help in making her pregnant. But that may not be the one which is preventing ectopic pregnancy.
We can take questions later on.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think Dr. Pai, it was a fantastic deliberation and we really loved, and I'm in favor of doing a self-injectomy. Sometimes, sir, we landed up even IVF into the stump pregnancies, and it was really troublesome to explain to the patient.
Exactly. That's
and
what
Dr. Vimlesh was saying, I really don't prefer hydrotubations and all. It's a damaged tube. It's really not going to help. To conceive, it's okay, but repeat ectopic. And I think a peritoneal lavage when you're doing a surgery, good lavage. When you do it and with the suction will release those adhesions, and it's much, much better. So it was wonderful listening to the presentation, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for a nice presentation. Dr. Manju.
Yeah, already Dr. Ritu Khanna has
Summed
already concluded this. And we are very thankful to you, Dr. Muralidhar Pai, for illuminating us on this dark cat.
Thank you, ma'am.
It was wonderful. And
Yeah.
especially
It
when
was
you
very
mentioned
nice.
about this discriminatory zone, which I was thinking to recreate. That is a wonderful thing. Everyone should get this message that till 3,000, if the patient is asymptomatic, we should not hurry in giving them methotrexate.
Exactly.
There are very minimal chances of disturbing an intrauterine pregnancy. And if it is in USA, you are going to pay some 20 million or something like that pounds. So the message today is not to hurry till 3,500, as Dr. has already said, and be very watchful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hapur Obs and Gynae Society also.
Yeah.
And sir, it was a treat hearing you. It was a treat.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Millie, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, introduce the next session speaker, Dr.
Okay.
Chairperson.
Okay, ma'am.
I think Dr. Nidhi is not there because she has fever. Just introduce Dr. Namita.
Okay, ma'am. Good evening to all respected seniors and my dear colleagues. On behalf of Hapur Obs and Gynae Society, I, Dr. Millie Singhal, welcome our chairperson, Dr. Namita Agrawal, ma'am. She is a HOD in Obs and Gynae, Rama Medical College, and also Sri Ram Medicare in Pilappa, Hapur. She is having her special field of interest in fertility and gynae ultrasound. Thank you. सभी को बहुत नमस्कार, प्रणाम. Namaste, ma'am. Namita, ma'am, are you there?
Thank you, Millie, for your kind words.
Thank you, ma'am.
I am honored. So, Anna, ma'am,
Yes.
should we invite now Dr. Sarita, ma'am, for the presentation?
Yes, yes.
Anjana, ma'am,
Yes, yes. I'm there.
please invite Sarita, ma'am, for the presentation, ma'am.
She's there or not?
Yeah, I'm there.
Ma'am, start the
I'm
presentation.
sitting
please.
on Daba.
Okay, okay. Ma'am, start the presentation, please.
You please allow me.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am,
Thank
already
you.
allowed.
Okay. Let me. Anjana, you have my slides now?
Let me see, ma'am.
You just, no, I'm not able to share my slides. Anjana?
Okay, ma'am, I'll see.
Namita,
I'm trying.
Are you able to see my slides? No?
Dr. Sarita?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Hello?
Ma'am, you are able to see now?
Namita,
Yes, ma'am, we are able to see.
Let me check.
But I'm not able to see, Anjana. I don't know what's wrong.
Ma'am, it has
Okay.
come. It has come.
Okay. Yes, got it.
Got it, ma'am?
Yes. Thank you, Anjana. Good evening to all my seniors and my friends to giving me this opportunity to present a case on cesarean scar pregnancy. Actually, this management is simply on my experience basis, and the doses and the drugs all are off the track. As this is our experience, so I don't know that this is my luck or is it really working. We studied, rather I did around 12 to 13 cases, and 5 cases were done by some of my colleagues, the same method. Anjana,
Yes, ma'am.
please, next slide. Next slide, please. This is my case. Mrs. X, 32 years old, para 2, L2 and abortion 1, with a history of 3 weeks overdue, presented with complaints of nausea and vomiting. TVS showed a low-lying gestational sac near previous scar with increased vascularity of Doppler with empty uterine cavity. That is scar ectopic with myometrial thickness of 3 millimeter. I'm jumping directly to just little bit history and my management only, right? This Mrs. X, next slide, dear. Next slide. No, previous one, Anjana. Yes. Sac was about 7 weeks and 2 days, and cardiac position was there. Serum beta HCG was 20,000. This is not 1,02,000. This is 20,000 milliunit per ml. Next slide, please. This is ultrasound finding. Cardiac position is being seen. This is done in our hospital only. And sac size, sac, yolk sac, and cardiac position you can see. Next, please, Anjana. How did we manage? After high risk consent and baseline investigation, that is our coagulation profile and liver function test and CBC and all that, a systemic methotrexate was administered in the dose of 1.5 milligram per kg in ringer lactate over 2 to 3 hours. It can be given IM also. This dose is little bit higher. This that is which we are using in ectopics is 1 milligram per kg body weight, but our experience was good with 1.5 milligram per kg body weight, and hence this is our protocol. Next slide, please. In another case, when cardiac pulsation was not present, increased dose of methotrexate, that is 1.5 milligram per kg, was very much effective in terminating pregnancy. Hence, this is our protocol. However, in this case, over 24 hours, the set and cardiac pulsation were intact. The same picture was seen even after 48 hours. Myometrial thickness was good. That was same 3 millimeter. Next, please. 48 hours after first dose of methotrexate, we decided to give 600 milligram of mifepristone followed by 48 hours of observation. And after a gap of 48 hours of mifepristone, we gave misoprostol 200 milligrams sublingual and per vaginal each, means total 400 milligram. Cardiac pulsation was still present. After 8 hours of monitoring, we decided to insert an intracervical Foley's 10 number, and the bulb was inflated with 5 ml saline. Next, please. After 8 hours of Foley's insertion, it was gently pulled out, confirming cervical dilatation. The bulb was deflated slowly with 1 to 2 ml saline, and it came out with 2 ml saline, which confirmed me that cervical dilatation is there. Next, please. A decision for local administration of methotrexate in gestational sac was taken because cardiac pulsation was still there. Patient was shifted to OD and given short GA. 20 milligram injection of methotrexate was inserted in the sac through intracervical route using on 18 number spinal needle under TS guidance. Next, please. And when I gave 20 milligram methotrexate, cardiac pulsation was no more there. Next, please. Ultrasound showed absent cardiac pulsation. The patient was taken for suction evacuation. Ultrasound was done, which confirmed the completion of procedure. Patient was discharged in satisfactory condition. I am audible now?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. This management is totally off the track. Means what is being taught to us and what we have already learned from books and our experience, that serum to manage ectopic pregnancy, serum beta HCG should be less than 10,000 milliunit per ml. Absent cardiac pulsation, and gestation sac should be less than 3 centimeter. Next, please. And what our experience shows us, we managed a total of 10 cases. Now the number has become 12, and 5 cases were managed by other doctors under my guidance following the same protocol. This protocol helped us to avoid surgical intervention. Next, please. In patient with no cardiac pulsation, methotrexate can work in high dose, or we were succeeded in 2 cases after putting intracervical catheter. In all other cases, when cardiac pulsation was there, in most of the cases, we put methotrexate through intracervical canal. Those who are doing IVF cycles and doing IVF practice, they can use trans-abdominal also, this needle and everything, but I am not comfortable with the abdominal route, so I always use this intracervical route. Next, please. What is take-home message? Don't give up hope if your first attempt or even the third attempt does not work. There is no evidence-based protocol, and we must all learn from each other's experience. Next, please. Next, please. And this I am other than doctor doing this plantation and kitchen-based composting. What I wanted to say about this protocol, I don't know. It will work for all of you, but we should try. We should definitely try to avoid surgeries. Thank you very much. If you have any question, I don't know my net will work or not, but I am still there. If you have any query, please ask me. My case is finished, Ranjana.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I've stopped sharing. Thank you very much. Ma'am, hemorrhage can occur or not after because there are
counseling.
Dr. Pai is there.
Counseling should be very good. You should counsel patient.
Dr. Ritu is there. Dr. Manju is there.
Yes, ma'am.
Ask them to comment and give their valuable input.
Yes, because this is all off the track. This is all
whatever it is, let's learn from each other.
Yeah. Yes.
Dr. Ritu, you want to say anything?
Yeah. I think Dr. Pai must also be there. And you know what, basically for scar pregnancies, I don't know whether giving methotrexate, I usually prefer to go, if it is definitely diagnosed, to go for a surgical one. You know, sometimes if you give them, they bleed such a lot, and one patient had to be shifted and then she bled, and ultimately she had to end up into so much of bleeding that she had to end up at hysterectomy. So it may be very, very dangerous sometimes. So I think the counseling to the patient has to.
Yes, it should be very good.
Yes.
On every step, this is the best counseling of my life. Always, this is the best counseling of my life. Yes. I always take time, half an hour, video counseling, audio counseling, and written counseling, everything. We have to land up for surgery anytime. So I do very good counseling. But this is just in my experience. I don't know how it will go further. Maybe my good luck or good luck of patient. But really I just wanted to share with all of you.
Sarkati, I have done 2 cases with your protocol.
Thank you. Thank you, Renu.
I don't know. I have also done so many cases, but I have faced the bleeding also. So I have made my own protocol. Like I always do the suction evacuation in OT with all preparation. And like जैसे incomplete abortion में हम DNC करते हैं missed abortion में, तो there are so many times gush of blood. आप उस समय पैनिक भी हो सकते हैं, पर you have to very calculative कि आपका जो uterine length, मतलब जो ectopic pregnancy का size है external os से कितनी दूरी पर है, तो आपका suction cannula उससे ऊपर नहीं जाना चाहिए ideally. और बहुत ज्यादा आप आपको सक्शन मतलब क्यूरेट भी नहीं करना है. You
No,
just
yes.
put your suction cannula at the site of the ectopic pregnancy and do the suction. And some
Bhuvnesh, we keep-
बहुत
Yes,
तेज
we
ब्लीडिंग
keep-
होती है. तो उसमें
Yes.
मैंने क्या किया दोनों तीनों बार
Inflate. Bulb inflate
put
किया
the
हमने.
police catheter again.
Yes, we did in 2
Put
cases.
police catheter again, वही जो with 10 ml of saline inflation. So it gave the pressure effect on the scar site. और जैसे कई बार होता है कि हम लोग पीपीएच कंट्रोल करने के लिए बेकरी बैलून डालते हैं, या कई बार डीएनसी में पोस्ट डीएनसी ब्लीडिंग बहुत होती है मिस्ड अबॉर्शन में सम टाइम. तो आई हैव डन सो मेनी टाइम्स द इंट्रायूट्राइन पैकिंग. I have done so many times the police catheter inside the uterus.
Yes, we did in
normal
2.
DNC.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I
Bhuvnesh, in 2
took the
cases.
same concept. I put the catheter and inflated the balloon and put that catheter for next 24 hours. After that, I slowly उसको निकाला, release किया, and then again did the ultrasound. And there was something, मतलब मेरे पास वो फिल्म भी है. बाद में 2 months के बाद वो केवल एक जैसे कैल्सिफिकेशन वाली एक लाइन सी दिख जाती है वहां पर. ऑल्दो इन अल्ट्रासाउंड हम लोग देख लेते हैं कि भाई प्रीवियस सर्जरी का स्कार मार्क, लेकिन जो स्कार प्रेगनेंसी के साइन होता है वो अच्छा सा कैल्सिफिकेशन वाली लाइन दिख जाती है. तो इट्स वेरी गुड. और बट आई वाज इंस्पायर्ड विद यू ओनली, बट आई डिड माय सम मतलब मॉडिफिकेशन ऑफ अदर
Yes,
प्रोटोकॉल.
we also did in 2 cases. Bhuvnesh,
Can we have the opinion of the other, our guest of honor, our chief guest and our other chairpersons? Can we have their opinion?
So
Dr.
in
Pai's
fact,
opinion?
so we are not doing anything which is out of protocols or out of anything. And scar pregnancies basically are 2 types: endogenously growing and exogenously. If they are exogenously growing, surgery is the only option. In endogenous only you can try these things, and systemic methotrexate plus local methotrexate plus suction evacuation and uterine artery embolization has a role. But mifeprostol and misoprostol, I have no experience, and we are not doing anything which is not in our guidelines basically.
मंजू जी, इसमें ना हमें ब्लैडर थिकनेस देखनी होती है, लाइक द ब्लैडर with full bladder we have to see the myometrial thickness. यदि myometrial thickness आपकी 3 millimeter और more than 3 millimeter है, it means जो growth है वो towards the cervix, मतलब towards the uterine cavity है.
You're right.
तो वहाँ जो फोलीज डालने का कंसेप्ट है वो ये भी है कि प्रेशर से जो थिनिंग हो जाती है उस जगह की, जो मुझे लगा कि जो सैक इनग्रोइंग टू द सर्वाइकल यूट्राइन कैनाल थिनिंग, मतलब एक लोकल प्रेशर इफेक्ट मिल जाता है, दैट विल हेल्प अ लॉट.
नहीं, definitely Dr. Tyagi can, I think, publish the papers and all, because experience matters a lot. And what I would like to say that any cesarean, if you are doing anybody, please do the uterine scar approximation very well and in 2 layers. Initially, we were doing in 2 layers. Now they have come to 1 layer. Isthmoseals should not be formed, and this will avoid the scar pregnancy. That is most important issues. So
thank you very much, ma'am. Perhaps
you.
I'm not able to. I'm audible?
Yes,
Still
ma'am.
audible?
you are.
Yes, ma'am.
You must present these papers, I think, Dr. Tyagi. Experience
Thank you, ma'am.
is matters a lot.
Let's do a little bit more work with our colleagues, and then we will publish a paper. Definitely, we will publish.
You must. So we.
And congratulations for
Dr.
dealing
Pai
so
is
many
also
scar
there.
topics. We haven't seen so many
It's
scar
a really. She requires 3 cheers to take such a heroic step. It's really.
All is well that ends well, finally.
Yes. That is it.
Dr. Pai is also there. Otherwise, then we'll go for vote of thanks.
Dr. Pai is there.
Will he comment? Ask him to comment also. And then finally conclude quickly.
Sir, Dr. Pai, ma'am, he's muted himself and वो photo भी नहीं आ रही.
अच्छा, ठीक है. फिर then.
Dr. Deepshika?
Yes.
Yes. Kindly give the vote of thanks.
Okay. जब भी कोई लेडी प्रेग्नेंट होती है तो घर में खुशियां छा जाती हैं कि एक नया मेहमान आने वाला है, और फिर या तो